The American Adoption Congress, 13th International Conference, April 11th to the 14th, 1991, in Garden Grove, California. This is program number D151, tape number 58A.
My name is Danielle Baker, Danielle Marie Baker. They didn't put it on my little thing, but it's in the gizmo. Because Marie Baker is who I was when I started life, and then that got disrupted, and I became Danielle somebody else. And so Danielle Marie Baker now is kind of a come full circle thing for me, and that's important. It kind of reiterates it every time somebody talks to me, writes to me, calls me. It helps me to solidify and kind of crystallize more and more all the time. So that's important. Next year, I hope to get that right. Welcome to the Impact of Rape. This is a real informal thing. I didn't expect many people. I thought maybe 8 or 10 brave souls would be here. And the thing about adoptees is that so many of us are aborted or given up, and we don't know that we're the product of rape, and people take that as a hard thing to tell you. They think that will be so difficult that they're going to spare you from that. They'll give you the rest of it, but they won't tell you about the rape. And then the birth mothers that have aborted or otherwise lost their child feel that it's not an issue for them any longer because obviously they don't have the child, so that's the end of the story. So to me, this is open to anybody who's been impacted by rape at all, including the husband or the significant other or the mother, or just, the ripple effect goes out to a lot of people. If we're looking at adoption, we're looking at one child, the parents of that child, the parents of the parents, the siblings. I mean, it just goes on, and the professionals, of course, that are involved too. So this is a small group, and I thought that we might just introduce by first name and just a sense quickly of your story, and if you want to identify what your relation or interest in rape would be. I'm an adoptee. Obviously, my mother was raped. So you start wherever you want. Sorry? You can pass if you want to.
I'm Susan, and I've not had to go through the experience of rape, but at times I work with birth moms who have gone through the experience of rape. I need to develop more of an understanding of how to meet their needs.
I'm Mim Nelson. I don't mind giving both my names. I'm a birth mother, and I was raped. And I'm reunited, and she knows.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Donna Catrick, and I again do support groups with birth mothers, and just finding lots of them who had been raped and had this double issue. Hadn't talked about the rape and hadn't talked about being a birth mother. It was difficult. I didn't know how to handle. I didn't know enough to be other than sympathetic, which is not enough.
My name is Bonnie, and I work with women who are placing babies for adoption, many of whom are in this situation. And my daughter is, her birth mother was raped, and I'm really not sure whether to tell her or what to tell her. And when we adopted her, the birth mother said she didn't want us to tell her. So I'm sort of here to find out what to do. And a lot of my clients, when they get leads on babies, and I'm helping them, they're asking me, well, what should I take this baby? Is it going to be too hard for the child? What am I going to tell the child? So I'm trying to help people decide whether they should adopt children of rape.
I'm Sheila Gans, and I'm a birth mother, and I was raped. I had a reunion with my daughter about 2.5 years ago, and it's been a very so-so kind of relationship, so I haven't told her yet. I want to, but we just talked actually after a almost total break for 1.5 years, so I kind of have that thing that I want to do, but it doesn't seem like she can even deal with me, and I don't know if I should lay that extra thing on her or what to do.
My name is Valerie Harrigan. I'm a social worker, and I'm also just now adopting a baby, a little girl who was also the product of a rape. And it's a very open adoption as far as us and the birth mother are concerned, but we don't have very much information about the birth father. It was an acquaintance rape. I mean, the birth mother knows something about him, but we don't really know very much. And I'm just sort of figuring out, I feel like I've decided that I want the child. I feel like it's her history, and she has a right to know it. If I know it, if anybody knows it, she should be the one to know it. But it's still a struggle, and nobody in my family thinks I should tell her. And the people think that if I should tell her, I should like make it sound a little better somehow. Like tell her that that they were together and that things got heated and that someone lost control and that something, and not use the big R word and stuff like that. And so I'm sort of figuring out. I know I want to tell her, but I'm just kind of struggling with it. She's 1 month old now, so I figure I have a little time. But I want to feel comfortable with it myself so that I can talk to her about it in an easy way.
I'm Ann Lewis, and I'm a social worker in an agency that places children and works with birth mothers. And I need to know more about this issue, both from the standpoint of being better able to understand birth parent issues, and also because we do have open adoption, and also from the standpoint of the adoptive couples, all of whom at the time of placement of a child who is the product, as they will oftentimes use the word, of rape, or the result of rape. It is such a loaded issue for many couples that they just, because part of the information about the birth mother is all known and open, the fact that it's very similar to your situation, the fact that there will be no information on birth father most of the time. There's no information on birth father. Seems to be extremely difficult to handle, and then you add to it the violence, and that was the cause of the conception. It's just very difficult, and so if I can better understand this, then perhaps I can help them better handle it.
I'm Mary DeBover, and I'm a social worker who also works with children, adoptive families, and birth mothers who are sometimes in that position.
I'm Joyce Stimson, and I'm a birth mother that was raped. And my concern was, I found my daughter, and I told her about it. Well, when I was going through the adoption process, I felt the shame of it, and so I lied and I didn't tell this, and then social workers added their story to it, and so I'm having to deal with that fantasy that they gave her and the reality of it, and it's they picked a much more romantic way of doing it, and now I'm having to deal with the harsh realities, and our reunion has been cooled, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on in her mind and how she's feeling about it. And because I know the father, she's totally shut down on him. I know how she could get a hold of him. He was the husband of a friend. And I don't know how if she ever wanted to find him, to hear his history, how that's going to go. And that's one reason why I felt I needed to tell her, because I didn't want her just calling him up on the phone and getting his wife and saying and so it does add some tricky stuff to it.
I'm Ray Wiley, and I feel a little bit uneasy being the only man here.
I didn't notice.
I'm interested in lots of ways. I'm an intermediary, and so I have to deal with files where there is no information on the birth father, which is similar to rape of a stranger situation. The agency that I do home studies for is going to be placing a child that is the result of rape. And so we've been debating how much do we tell the adoptive parents. And my mother's story is that I was conceived, although she was married to my father, she had begun divorce proceedings, and her story is that he raped her. My bias about her, now that I know her as an adult, is that he didn't, but I've lived with the story that she was through with him and he raped her and I was conceived, and so the marriage was continued because of that. So, and I hadn't thought at all about that as a reason for being here.
My name is Marlene Piasecki. I'm the director of an agency that serves many women who are pregnant as the result of a rape. They are victims, and works with many families who are adopting children whose conception was the result of a rape, and we're concerned about both the counseling for the women and how that affects the pregnancy itself and the decision-making process and the long-term impact on them and how we can best assist them in making their decisions. And with the couples, we find three things affect their decision-making about the adoption of a child whose birth is a result of a rape. And one is fear of the telling, fear that they don't want to face the pain the child would face. That's what they say. I can't deal with this pain, so I don't want to adopt this child. The lack of background information, although some of that is fear of lack of genetic background information, often it's articulated as they want something positive to say about both parents. What do you say positive about a rapist? And unfortunately, I think it is the last place in adoption where we haven't let go of the bad seed theory, particularly if the child is a male. And those are the issues that we see with families.
You want to come sit up here? You're doing so well, really. Delane?
Oh, I'm Delane Curtis, and I'm just interested because of counseling a lot of birth mothers over the years.
We're just kind of going around introducing. I don't know if you feel comfortable with that, getting a sense of who's been impacted personally, who's professional, that sort of thing, if you feel comfortable with it.
Sure, I'm Marcia Henderson. I'm a clinical social worker. I've been practicing 24 years, and I have an adopted daughter.
Well, welcome to everybody. You said it really well. We are kind of looking at that last horizon that really hasn't been dealt with, and we're still kind of in the cave. The three issues that you brought up are paramount to me, and I found my mother after 9 years of searching. I was told by the agency that she had been raped, kind of. This is the way they sugar-coated it. Kind of raped, but probably more coerced. Because if you think about the times, 1957, well, you know, girls didn't just turn up pregnant, so it was probably, you know, a little coercion sort of a thing. So I walked away thinking, a little coercion sort of a thing, what is that, you know? And I kept that information and kind of labored under that for many years, for the 9 years that I searched. And when I found her, I picked up the phone and called her. She answered the phone, and I said, you know, did you give birth to a child in 1957? Yes, I did. In New York? Yes, I did. Was it a girl? And she said, you know, this has no meaning for me. I don't know what this is about. And I said, well, you know, I gave some more identifying information, and she said, yes, this is all true, it's all true, but what are you doing? This has no meaning for me. And within a couple of minutes in the conversation, she said, yes, I had that child. I will be honest with you, I had that child. I don't know if it was a boy or a girl because it died. And suddenly a lot of things began to make sense. A lot of my emotional baggage began to make sense. And she's believed all these years that I was stillborn. I was taken away from her. We still don't even know who did it. But apparently through my research, what I find is they thought because it was a rape that that was the right thing to do, to tell her that I had done the right thing and died, and then that would be the end of it. So here I pop into her life all these years later, and within 5 minutes, my mother and I are both very open, within 5 minutes we were discussing the rape. She said I was raped. And I had had this information for 9 years, and maybe even guessed at it before that on my own. And she said I was raped, and suddenly it was news. I had never heard it before. She wasn't sort of raped, she was really raped. She was raped savagely, and the violence is hard for people to bear. It's really hard for people to put themselves in that position to know what a rape is really about. Even people who have been raped. I've been raped, and it's still hard for me to see my mother raped. And even harder still to be a part of that. I almost feel like I was there and I should have done something about it. I almost feel like I sat idly and let her be hurt and I didn't help, which is a ridiculous notion based in no reality whatsoever, but these are my feelings. I hung up the phone. It's kind of shocking too, I think, to have such an intense conversation right away, but that's mom and daughter. I hung up the phone and looked in the mirror. When I found her, it was 3 years ago. 3 years ago. Pardon?
How old are you now?
Oh, I was 21. I was just about 30 when I found her, which is a real transitional time anyway. So I hung up the phone and I looked in the mirror, and coming from my own bias, even though I'm involved in the story, I looked for a rapist in me. I looked for that blood. I thought, my first thought was, I'm really glad I'm not a man, because what would that create for me? Would I be a genetic rapist, you know? And I went through a real identity upside down, and the bottom dropped out and the rug came out, and it was so blatant that, I mean, I'm not even going to try to hold on to this ship. I'm going to let it capsize and then just try to save myself when it's all over. You know, I'm just going to go with it. And I did allow myself about a month to just go with it, and it really, the first half hour was really something. I completely went upside down and back. Instead of getting answers in finding my mother, I got questions. Instead of answers, I was more lost than I was yesterday. And I looked for this man in me. And I'm a very gentle person by nature. I certainly didn't manifest that on purpose to prove anything, because I already was who I was when I found out. I'm a very gentle person by nature. And I don't see this man anywhere in me. I don't see him, but yet, doesn't he have to be there somewhere? I mean, he was a part of this thing. And it's funny, as the story unfolds, I didn't take him seriously as a person for a long time until I got a questionnaire from somebody doing research in the mail, and it said, you know, your birth mother, blah, blah. Well, I adore my birth mother. I mean, anything from my mother, and it's embellished and flowery, and I made copies and sent it to her, and, you know, we have this Cinderella romance together. And then it said, what about your birth father? My birth father, I never even thought of him as a birth father. And it's hard for me to give him that. It really, I have to admit, it's hard for me to give him that respect. It really is. In my mind, he's more of a sperm donor, violent person who hurt my mother. That's how I think of him. And my mother's the angel who can do no wrong, you know. So it said, what about your birth father? And there was this unfolding in me. I said, well, you know, this is what I know. And then it said, what about his siblings? Siblings. Siblings. He probably has siblings. I didn't even think of that. What about his mother, his wife, mother? He came from somewhere. I'm an adoptee, you know, this connection. I learn about it again and again on new levels. Other people are connected too. My goodness, it just never ends. So suddenly he became real to me. He had an age, he had a place that he probably lived and a job, and maybe he had other children. I mean, maybe we're not done finding my siblings. Here we go again, you know. He might have a wife who knows about me, or somebody might know about me. Did he rape again? Did he rape many times? Do I have siblings walking around all over the place? When I found my brother, I had this lifelong fear that I was going to be intimate with a man and find out he was my brother. I mean, I had this lifelong dread. When I got to know a man, I had to, okay, so where are you born? You sure that's true? I'm going to see documents, you know. I always had this fear that he might not even know, and it might be a fact. So, do I have 15 siblings walking around out there? I don't know. You know, so this whole can of worms is opened up again. So that's what it's been for me, and dealing with that emotionally has been tough, but, you know, it's the truth. and it's my truth. Thank you. I don't want to be protected anymore. Let's just stop it. Let's stop all the secrecy, the lying, the I'll take care of your feelings and you'll take care of mine, but I took care of yours a little more than you. Let me help you take care of mine, and it just gets so complicated. You take care of you. I will take care of me. We will help in the ways that we can, but let's just put the truth on the table. And that's got to be genetic, because my mother is the same way. So that's been wonderful, and as I look back on it, I am impressed with her, that for a woman who has had no therapy, does not get cable, has never seen Oprah, who lives up in the mountains, she, within 5 minutes, was comfortable with telling me the truth. She thought enough of herself, she thought enough of me, and she was just generally open enough, and I think a lot of that, I really do. So we've had an honest relationship from the beginning. I asked her, how come you didn't get an abortion? And I didn't feel like, I was sort of kind of, well, not really wondering, but, you know, I didn't hem and haw. I just said, why didn't you get an abortion? And she said, you know, I'll tell you the truth. I didn't think of it. He drugged me. I still don't know. He drugged her, and she still doesn't know what she was drugged with. But she checked out. She has no memory of giving birth. None. Zero. She was pregnant, and then it was a year later when she was not pregnant. The man came to visit her in Bellevue Hospital, where I probably was born, because my records have been altered, and I think we're covering up that I was born in a psych ward, because I was supposed to have been born in this hospital that has never existed. I've been in the archives of the downtown library. It never existed. So he came to visit her posing as an uncle, and they believed him. He'd say, well, she's a little, you know. And she'd say, get him away, he's a rapist, he hurt me, he threatened to kill me, and he'd say, well, you know. So they let him in repeatedly. And, you know, it's possible he was drugging her every time he came to see her. I don't know what happened, but she checked out. So she has no memory of this. So that's my story. It's certainly a can of worms. It is not the story that I ordered. In San Diego, I'm kind of the local horror story. You know, it's my claim to fame, which is, you know, okay. I'm one of those adoptees who was abused so much, I need a claim to fame, just to keep going every day, you know. And then I was adopted by abusive parents, sexually abused by both of them, you know, so it just goes on and on. It's a miracle I'm sitting here. It's really a miracle. It's taken years of therapy. So that's my story, and I thought we would just kind of open it up. I don't have statistics. I don't have a lot of research. It's not out there. It's not available. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time this has happened here. Delane? Thank you. Thank you. He did break her leg. She tried to escape from him. She worked for him. He tried to break her leg, and she tried to get away. He did break her leg, and my brother and sister were there, my half-brother and half-sister, and they were bound and gagged, and they were in the closet, and they witnessed this whole thing. And my brother still has a lot of trouble with that. In fact, his life has been so awful, he was just arrested recently, and I don't even know what for, and I'm afraid to find out that he's a rapist, you know. Although he wasn't directly biologically affected by the rape, he was emotionally impacted by it. So, you know, the ripple just never stops. It just never stops. He's 38 years old, sleeps with a light on because of the dark closet, and has terrible dreams about spiders because there were spiders in the closet. So this fellow broke her leg, and she's had 14 subsequent operations on this leg, and is going this year for a prosthesis, because it's just been unsuccessful. And when I met her, when we were reunited, she came down here in a wheelchair with a cast from her ankle to her hip. She came down, yeah, from ankle to hip she had a cast on when she came down in a wheelchair to reunite, and took the train, because nobody in our family flies. It's kind of fun. We said, how are we going to reunite, you know, and we both said at the same time, well, I don't fly. So, you know, those things are always kind of interesting to me. So yes, thanks, Delane. It was very, very violent. That part is so hard for me to deal with. Like I said, I have the guilt that I should have stopped this. So here's mother who would do anything for daughter, and here's daughter that would do anything for mother. We're just a couple of saints, and we're just going to fly away into the clouds together, you know. So I thought that we would just open it up. We have a lot of professionals here that have specific questions, but I really think that this is the first time this has even been done. I think this is breaking new ground. And I was supposed to have a clinician with me who I guess couldn't deal with it because this clinician's not here. So anyway, I'm a feeling person, and we do have 3 people who were impacted by rape. And whatever you feel comfortable with, I just thought people would like to express some of what's going on. Maybe we can talk with each other about questions, and I don't think we can even get to too many answers this year, but for next year I think we can just get started at looking at this stuff. So I would like to open it up. Sheila.
Well, I would really like to know how you feel about my telling my daughter. I have had that conversation in my head a million times, and one of the things that I always, two requirements I always had for myself and how I would tell her what the conditions were. One, that I would tell her in person, which is a little difficult because she's on the East Coast. And the other one, it just feels so important to me that she knows that I love her before I tell her. Because it's not the reason why I surrendered. I surrendered because I had no choice, period. It's not what I wanted to do. It was really against my will. And I think, sort of, I've gotten some of that across to her. And we did meet a couple of months after I found her. We had a total time of 3 hours one time and 20 minutes a second meeting. And when we met, I hugged and kissed her. She wouldn't. Her arms were at the side, and she really wouldn't look me in the eye. And
how old was she?
She was 19. And the only question that she asked me in the first letter that she wrote me when she sent pictures after I called her was, how come he didn't help me? And I said, well, he didn't know. And that's really the only question she's ever asked about.
Good answer.
This was an acquaintance rape, and in fact, when I found out I was pregnant, I went back to find this guy. And he had left. He had left the state. At least that's what they told me where he worked. Anyway, as you know, I wrote a play about my experience, and for me, losing my daughter was always the major. I mean, if you look rape up in the dictionary, the first definition is carrying away a person by force. The second definition is the physical act. And that really kind of corroborates for me that losing my daughter was much more impacting experience in my life than being raped. My rape was not as violent as your mother's, but it was definitely rape, and it was a weapon, and I mean, there was no halfway about it. So for me, that sort of seemed like it happened in an afternoon, and you're pregnant for 3 long months, and that was the thing that I really dealt with. And 15 years later, when I was writing the play, that I really started to go to a rape survivor group at the Women's Building, and starting to deal with that stuff. And in the past year, I've really cleared myself from a lot of the experience, and myself and my therapist independently realized that this guy is a rapist, and he's definitely done it before or since. But
well, you bring up a lot of issues, and for the sake of the tape, I think we better pass the mic around. One of the primary
that's kind of right. I started to say what I was thinking of saying.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Where we are, it's like, at what stage of the relationship that I have with my daughter do you think it's okay, or should I just, it's like now she's probably in finals, and since we've had this talk a couple of weeks ago, which was like after a year or 5-month big break, should I kind of keep the momentum going and at least not tell her in a letter, but have her call me? I don't have a phone number, I cannot call her, she's just given me a post office box to write to her. That's how distant she is from me. So, how do you feel that, where it seems like she hasn't even decided when we talk. She said, well, I'm not sure if I even want a relationship with you. I might have issues to deal with on being adopted, but I don't need you to figure them out. And so, what do I do in a situation like this?
Well, that raises a lot of stuff. I think what we're here to talk about is that in my, I don't know how to phrase
The
it.
right to know the truth
Mhm.
and.
In my mother's
sometimes
case,
a good time.
she was raped, but really we were raped. We were raped together, and it's our issue, and we have to work it out together. And I think every case is so different that it has to be handled according to the people involved. Let's pass this mic around, because they expected you to just ask a question, but the comments are great. I think it's great. I just want to make sure that they get recorded, so why don't we see if this thing will reach, and we can just pass it around. There you
So
go.
are you saying that you're not going to give me any?
I will.
You just passed the mic to him, he completely went by me.
But he's been
Oh, I
trying to
didn't see
interject.
that, okay.
I think that one thing to keep in mind is you ask a question that is really kind of like, when do we tell kids about sex? And when she asks about her birth father, that's an appropriate time to give information about her birth father. If she's busy digesting you, and she hasn't yet asked about her birth father,
Right.
is it really appropriate
Right.
to
Well, that's my
giving
question.
her information that she doesn't need, or that she hasn't gotten around to dealing with?
I mean, for me, right now, it's like I feel like I need some support, but I haven't told her, because I feel really anxious to have the truth really out there for us.
Sheila, what if she just knows you're willing to tell her, and that you will tell her, no matter what your relationship with her is, but that you're willing to share
What do you
with
mean?
her, that you're willing to share with her answers about her origins or whatever
Right.
she has, even if she thinks she's gonna work it out by herself.
Yeah,
But-
right, well, yeah.
But I don't know about forcing it.
You mean just
going
telling
in-
her that I have some information, and if she, when she wants to hear it, I'll tell
You
her?
obviously know more than you've told her. You
Yes.
haven't told her much, because she hasn't asked much.
Right.
But
No,
just
but
to
I have
say, I'm
given, I
willing.
had his name, I mean, I knew his name.
Yeah.
It's not on the birth certificate, but I remembered it so that I could tell her, and I gave her the physical identifying information that I could, and its description, and I gave her his name without her even asking for it. So I've given her everything but the event.
Sometimes you have to wait though till they're ready to.
Yeah.
to-
Now, see, I have another friend who's adopted who said, well, waiting for her to ask about him is like what adoptive parents say, well, my child hasn't asked anything about adoption, so obviously he or she is not thinking about it, and so.
But that's why I'm
and-
saying, just let her know you're willing to discuss
See,
it
you-
whenever she
mhm.
wants to. You are wanting to,
Uh-huh.
but you don't want to push her.
Because you offered
Right.
already, see, and she
Yes.
rejected more or less, at
Yeah,
least at the moment.
yeah, right,
So
right.
it seems to me she isn't
Well,
quite
that sounds
ready.
like a good,
At any given time, there's two different issues going on.
Okay.
There's I need to know and I need to tell.
Mhm.
I need to know from you and I need to tell you.
Mhm.
So what I'm hearing is that you really need to share your information.
yes,
For you, for whatever reason, for what you think that can do for her, but also for the release for yourself.
well, for the release for myself, and also so that she will just have the truth.
But
And I feel like I'm withholding this, which is what's behind my need to know, but at the same time,
do you have a need for her to have the truth even if you have to force feed it?
oh, no, I wouldn't
That's kind of
do
what
that.
I'm hearing though at some level, is that you're not going to rest until she has that true truth.
What if it was written and you told her what it was, that it was more information about her beginnings, and that it was not easy reading, and for her to hang on to it till she wanted to? Then you will have given it, and she doesn't have to take it in
Right.
until she wants to.
Good point.
Do you feel like there is information that you're lacking?
Well, I don't know much about him, but,
Because sometimes what we do is we have a need to give because we really have a need to get. So maybe you're feeling that you really want to give this information because there's a void in you that's needing to receive information.
Or maybe know that it's okay.
Yeah.
So there may be some hunger for forgiveness from her, which raises an issue that I have that hasn't been mentioned at all, and that is, as I look through old files as an intermediary, it's almost like there's a real element of, is this true in anything I read in the older files? And so, how do we give legitimacy to the true rapes as opposed to those where it was a good girl that couldn't possibly have had sex, quote unquote, so it must have been rape.
Well, I think
Or
that
there-
whole issue of credibility and a woman being raped and taking her word for it, I mean, when you
Yeah.
said, I mean, that is a feminist
That-
issue
that's
to the
what-
core, that
classic
is the
issue.
absolute
Well, and there was
classic.
no
Sometimes
date
someone
rape
else
then.
makes that.
If you knew the
Yeah, but
person-
nobody else
if you
can
knew the
make
person,
that
it wasn't rape
determination.
back
Right.
then, that's right.
Right.
And so,
Absolutely.
I mean, if a woman says, yeah, I mean, unless it's a,
The situation I have though is where social workers were embellishing on all sorts of information, not just
they
that
do.
issue. And we think rape as an issue of placement is an issue today. Let me tell you, it was an issue then. I mean, I've seen reports that had no bearing on fact that made the child quote unquote adoptable. And so I've had one where there was no mention of rape and it was in fact rape.
I didn't
because
tell
I've
my
done a
social
reunion.
worker.
Let's hear from them.
Yeah.
A lot of them
In-
don't, I think that's true.
in my case, I was also acquaintance raped, and this was in 1963. And to complicate matters more, he was black. And my parents and he beat me afterwards too, and kicked me out of a moving car on the main street of town. And my parents took me to the police station, and they said, well, you can't prove rape, and you probably asked for it.
The police said that.
The police
because
said that.
You shared that with me before.
Yeah.
The police said that.
But in
And-
a report, sorry. And in my records, I have my social worker's records, and it states quite clearly, you know, the nature of the conception. And when I found my daughter, you know, I'm trying to evaluate if I did the right thing at the time. You know, of course, hindsight is so much clearer than what you're dealing with at the emotional high of a reunion. But I guess I was bolstered by the fact that she had searched for me when she was 19, and when she found out that I was her white parent, she stopped because she didn't want to be rejected again, and she didn't want to interfere with my life. So, but when I made the search, I went through the adoption agency, and the social worker contacted her. Social worker was tremendous, and she must be close to 70, and she's very pro-reunion and just unbelievable. I always called her my guardian angel. But she let me know that my daughter really wanted to talk to me, and gave both of her phone numbers at work and at home. And I called her at work, and she found a private office to speak in, and you know, she talked to me, and she talked to my other kids, and then she asked me about her father. And I said, well, that's kind of difficult. And she says, well, I can imagine, you know, meaning the interracial thing. And I said, no, it's even harder than that. And I told her that, that I knew him, but that he had raped me. And she was quiet for a short time, but then she said, well, I feel really bad for you because nobody should have to experience that. And she's always been kind of cavalier about it, and she doesn't have adoption issues anyway.
So you told her in the first meeting?
I told her on the phone.
On the phone, wow.
You know, but that didn't affect, you know, anything at the time. But now that it's been a year and a half, she doesn't talk openly about her issues, and I'm sure she's got so many layered issues of being biracial and being, you know, having been conceived in a rape, and
was she raised by a
she was raised by a
Caucasian
black family who were abusive and racist. And she wasn't adopted till she was 6, although she was raised in that same home. And a lot of issues in that family too, and so she's got a lot of stuff that she's not dealing with. And I keep trying to broach the subject, you know, trying to pull something out of her, and it's, you know, I can't really identify from this perspective. She's in Philadelphia, which makes it even harder.
It really does have
phone calls are, you know, I end up sounding like a babbling idiot, or like my mother, who you know, it's frightening to, you know, hear that voice come out of my mouth, and it's such a struggle. But
have you talked about, you know, the rape thing with her since that time you first told her?
Yeah, well, I've been trying to find him, because I mean, he knew when I found out that I was pregnant. I told him. And he just laughed.
Mm.
And he was sort of the stud of the town, very good looking, very tall, you know, I mean, just, you know, very pursued by lots of women, and he had a whole bunch of kids. Oh, I mean, she's got at least 10 siblings, half siblings from him. I even met some of his children before I even knew about it. I mean, before I even had any kind of real contact with him. I knew girls that had gone to my school and ended up pregnant by him. And I really wanted to find him, so I started calling people back east who, first of all, didn't know that I was pregnant because it was a big secret. And I managed to hide it, God knows how. I raped in November in my junior year and went through with nobody knowing for sure. So I had to first tell people, well, you know why, and then we moved. I said, you know why we moved? And no, not really. And found out that he may have been murdered. And so I shared that information with her, and she said, I never cared about that son of a bitch, excuse the French, but she said, oh, I wanted to know about you. And I said, well, whenever you're ready to find him or find anything more about him, I'm ready to help you. But then when I told her that one of my friends thinks that he may have been murdered, she said, well, lived by the sword, died by the sword. And you know, when I hear that, I thought, well, you know, how grounded, you know, how accepting. But I'm not willing to accept that goes to a deeper level.
Yeah.
She's really thinking.
And I don't know how to break through her denial, because God knows, I think there's a genetic tendency to deny because it's real strong in my family. It's real strong in me. I'm still breaking through.
This is the end of Side A. Please continue on to Side B. The American Adoption Congress, 13th International Conference, April 11th to the 14th, 1991 in Garden Grove, California.
You're talking closed adoptions where they couldn't be telling the child anything about you either. Here we're talking an open adoption where there is information about birth mom. What are they going to be doing about birth dad?
Well, we could have had that in our file.
But it's a different.
No, but it's a different time. I really think at the whole conference, it happens often. New birth mothers
Then I
are
think
different
that
than
the
old
birth mother has to be
mothers.
brought into it. If she's
New
available,
adoptees
she
are
has to be
different
brought
from-
into it.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to be
Because
if she's not comfortable being brought into it.
But we
You
can't
put that
compare
on
these
her
two
either.
cases. You can't
Yeah.
say.
They are not
That's right.
similar.
They're so different.
You know, in my case, the birth mother has told us as much as she knows about who the birth father was, and has told us some about the actual experience that she went through of this date rape. And she has basically said that we are free to tell the child what we think is best for her as she develops, and that if it becomes a problem or if it seems to be what's indicated, that she will also talk to the child. She does not want to have, at this point, she's saying she doesn't want to have ongoing regular contact, but she wants to sort of know where we are and for us to know where she is. And you know, if I feel like I'm not able to tell the child, or this baby isn't, or the child isn't accepting it, or whatever, if it seems like it's needed, that she will tell the child the story from her point of view. And I feel like it's perfect. I mean, I
That
feel like
sounds
I
good.
couldn't
Yeah.
ask
Sounds
for
good.
anything
It is.
better.
That sounds good.
Because it seems to me, I mean, with the adoptive parent, you know, totally taking over the situation and telling the child without involving the birth parent, it seems that that's just like another intermediary situation. The same thing that with, you know, agencies taking over with searching and contacting.
They've
you
always
know,
done that
the
in
parties.
closed. They've told us why, they've told our children why we gave them up. When we probably couldn't have put it into words ourselves at the time. So they've always had that position of
The
telling the
biggest
child
part that
everything.
I feel is that I was victimized the first time, and I feel victimized again.
Sure.
As it's being passed on down,
Yes.
because it's gonna go
Right.
from generation to generation. And I want the interpretation to be as accurate as possible.
Well, that's what I'm referring to, you know, maybe cut out the middleman kind of thing,
Yeah.
if at all possible.
But one of the things about what you were saying is that these are the two most important probably people in the child's life. The birth mother and the adoptive mother are two very significant persons. That's why if they were both involved.
Let's not forget the
It's
adoptive
not there.
or the birth father.
Yeah, I know, but
I thought you were gonna say the social worker.
That's really good we have this male
As
advocate.
primary
Yes.
caretaker of my
Yes,
daughter
it
in the
is.
first year of her life,
Like we're clones or
I'm
something.
real
What's that?
strongly committed to women recognizing men are sometimes real participants in the parenting process.
Keep reminding us,
I
Ray.
wouldn't be
No,
here.
thank you. We don't get it, we don't get as many birth
I
fathers.
wouldn't be here if my husband wasn't.
And I'm not a birth father. but I
Was
was
it
at
what?
home with the baby.
Oh,
Well,
I-
actually, I'm a birth father, I just didn't relinquish.
Right.
Yes.
I say, anything, an adoptive father wouldn't actually be involved ordinarily, it would be just.
Adoptive father should be involved
fathers we
because-
see are totally
Danielle,
involved.
What if
how
it's a
would you have
son?
felt if your
It doesn't
adoptive
matter.
parents had told you?
I wouldn't believe them.
Well, yeah, but her adoptive parents
Well,
were.
Well, I know they
Anyways,
were, and I know
yeah.
it's an extreme situation, but I'm
Um,
just asking anyway.
But it's
since
their
he's the
issue,
only
too.
adoptee in the room that I can
It's
ask.
the adoptive father's issue.
I
It's
think
the
it
adoptive
is.
father's issue that his child has been.
Can you
conceived
make
in.
it?
Well, yes, because the belief is going to be transferred to him. There's going to be a transference to that man, and certainly he's involved, because
Right.
he's going to be viewed in a new light now.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, and the
It's-
adoptive
it's up
father's
to
gonna
him.
pass on an attitude about
Mhm.
his child's conception.
Right. And children put together so much out of what is not verbalized. You were talking about, here's the female child, the birth mother, the adoptive mother. That child can add. Maybe that
Yeah.
child can't say 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
but that child can get a sense there are 3 females
Men are
here.
no good.
This is not a
There's
men's
something
thing.
wrong with men.
men.
They either don't
Exactly.
care, or they created this, or, they're just absent. And a child can pick up on that, maybe not on a conscious level until they're older, but that does
Maybe,
register
yeah.
on
Maybe
some
never
level.
conscious.
It does.
Did your parents know about your conception?
I don't know.
Your
There's-
father's
there's-
dead, is your adoptive mother still
Both
living?
dead.
Both dead.
Yeah, both dead.
What would you recommend that I do when I do tell my daughter for her to get some kind of counseling or?
We don't know what she's gonna say.
Yeah, recommend it.
No, I don't.
Recommend
may
it, but you
like-
can't guarantee
Yeah.
she'll do it.
Oh, absolutely
Yeah,
not,
because
no
I
way.
recommend that all sorts of, the
Oh, well, I
adoption
have
form in
too, you know.
Philadelphia
Oh,
to my
sure.
daughter, and, everything else that's
I've
available
said
to
that
her.
also.
But I don't have adoption issues.
Is there a
Yeah.
difference
Mine said-
perhaps
But what-
between offering?
Let me
and-
answer
What
the
can I
question.
offer
Ray,
to
let me answer
her
the
after I tell her?
I feel that, this is my own personal opinion, this is not a professional opinion. My own personal opinion is that this is highly individual stuff. It's highly personal stuff. Timing is very important, and I think that nobody is more like my mother than I am, and nobody's more like my mother than I am. That could be wishful thinking. I don't know. I don't think anybody can talk to her, and she talked to me better than we can. What I would really recommend is to feel it out, to try to get away from all this and get down in here, get away from the pain in the heart and the ideas in the head, and get at the gut level and feel what's right. And you'll know. Maybe that's superstitious, but I really believe in these cases we just know what to do and not to.
And
I know
except,
that's corny.
except that there may be some pain that she's got to figure out.
There's
the
gonna be
best
pain.
style of coping with pain,
Right.
whether counseling is appropriate or going off into the woods is appropriate. or
Which is a
whatever.
feature of being alive.
Yes.
And I
You
think too-
cannot protect her from
No.
that, and you would be wrong to try.
Yeah. Well, I know I can't.
We all have baggage.
Yes.
I think too, it's real important for you to give yourself permission that you don't necessarily have to be the primary person to share it. I'm not an adoptive mom, but I know with my children, my daughter and I are extremely close. We look the same, we do everything the same. However, there are some issues in life that my husband addresses with her better, and she relates to him better. And sometimes I want to hit those issues with her, and I have to back off and let him do it. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to come in right after him and things like this. And I think it's the same thing with an adopted child. There are some issues where the adoptive parents, mom or dad, need to approach the subject with the freedom of bringing in the birth parent.
Well, in my
Do you see what I'm
my
saying? Because I'm
situation,
hearing you
it's
say very
too late
strongly that
for
those
that.
adoptive
Not only that,
parents.
but my daughter's adoptive parents unfortunately don't want anything to do with me, so that is.
Another thing that we're
No,
dealing
they
with
refuse
here.
any contact with me whatsoever.
Another thing in general that we're dealing with is
If I contact them, she will cut me off.
our overcompensating for what went wrong with us.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So we're like just we have this burning desire to do it,
right and highly ascended and evolved and sophisticated and, right, up to the minute, what was the latest breaking news this morning? What are people doing as of, 9 o'clock this morning, Eastern Standard Time? You know what I mean? We want to be right there and doing it the right way. I gave myself permission to screw it up, to cry, to babble like an idiot, to be my feeling self.
I think that's the smartest thing
I
you
think
could
it's
have done.
very important.
Or to be inconsistent.
I feel, yes, and to change a lot.
Yeah.
I feel it's very important. I feel it's very important to offer and see if the other person wants to receive what you have to offer. I think what Dawn is
Actually, I
saying,
really like your idea a
it's
lot.
very,
I think that
very
is
good.
the way I will approach it. I like that
I think
idea
it's
a
very,
lot.
very good.
Well, it's funny, when I found my son, he wasn't conceived in rape, but I was willing to tell him anything he wanted to know about any of it. And one of the first things he said to me is, I don't want to hear about the birth or any of that stuff. So I said, fine, and I never mentioned it. And like 4 years later, he said to me, you never told me anything about my birth. And I just had to laugh. But part of me was saying, but I would have,
Yeah.
We have our little kids love us on, I'll give you anything, not realizing maybe they're not ready to receive anything.
right. And he didn't realize that he didn't remember that he'd said that, and now he was willing to hear it.
Aren't we
And why wasn't I
constantly
telling him,
Aren't we constantly trying
Yeah.
to make up for
Yeah.
Well, that's the
what
thing,
we
is it's a-
lost and what they didn't get?
It's an
because this
ongoing
was a
process,
secret
though.
so
A
long, we
relationship
wanted to be
unfolds.
vulnerable.
And where does
I mean,
the
your
other
birth
come
mother
from?
may come around to viewing things differently too, as far as
she might.
contact, or as far as what she wants the child to know. Or, like your son came around to wanting to know things that he did not definitely want to hear at the beginning. It's an ongoing process. I mean, my grandmother was totally uptight about everything to do with the fact that I've adopted and that it's open and that it's racially, everything about it is just awful to her. Is saying, well, at least, one thing that's important is when you tell your child all of this information, you're going to have to say it just exactly right, because if you don't choose the words very carefully, you're going to ruin her life.
Oh, right.
And I said, look, if I love her and she loves me and we talk all the time,
Yeah.
it's going to be a process. And if I get it wrong the one day, I'll say to her, I was thinking about the conversation we had yesterday.
Let me take
and
my
I
big
got
eraser
something
and
else.
change
I
it.
want to add something, because I think I kind of got screwed up last
Let's
night when we
modify it.
talked.
Yeah.
Let's talk again. It's a process, all of these things. You're not, the same thing will happen when you tell, it may not go well, but then you'll add to it.
In the first place, you don't tell a 6-year-old the story the same way that you tell a 12-year-old, nor a 12-year-old the same way you do an 18-year-old. That's child development has to be
Who's got the rule book as to the fact that you said it
I know,
just
I hope I
right?
find a good.
Yeah, who's judging?
I hope I can find
Yeah.
the quotes in the library or whatever of the perfect way to say all
But
this.
time, is a relative thing. I mean, you've talked about the time since your search, and other people have, but it took 4, not months, but years. This information may not be relevant to your daughter until she's 30. We know it's relevant to her, but in the sense, relevant in the sense that emotionally, she can take it in.
Right.
Now she's able to take a letter that comes to a post office
Right.
box.
Right.
It may take 5 years for her to take a letter that comes to her house, and another 5 years to take a phone call, and 5 years from that to hear.
Face to face.
Or she could be like me and she saw the picture better than I did,
That's right, but you see, the time is really,
And there again, you just go
so
and you
relative
gut
here, and 4
level, like
years.
you're
And had it
saying,
been
yeah.
14 years, that would have been okay
Yeah.
too.
It
because
keeps
he would have
changing.
And then he can
ultimately
turn
asked-
right around and
timing.
say, well, what took so long?
Yeah.
The
I'm
timing,
saying, you did, but what's to say? It just took that
the
long, that's all.
timing keeps changing too.
That's all.
I came together with my birth mother. It was a big, rush, and it was a honeymoon. It was this thing, and she came to stay with me for 10 days, and I fell in a heap when she left. And we had no contact for, I don't remember how long it was, months. Maybe Donna, you might
was a
remember,
long time,
6
yeah.
months, 5 months, 6 months. And I was completely open,
After
and
it was
I
10 days.
initiated the search, and I did all that stuff, and I just ran out of gas and just went, And it took everything that I could muster to get it going again. ongoing relationships are not the same as reunion.
Mhm.
The reunion's right here and then it's over. You've done it. Now you move into this realm and it's different. There's different rules and it takes a lot of energy.
And we don't acknowledge how much energy it takes.
A lot of energy.
Yeah.
If somebody had shown me all of this before, I don't know. It's really a crapshoot. I don't know if I would have come through that.
And there's so often each person being so respectful of the other,
Right.
to make sure they don't intrude, and so everybody wonders why the other gets mad. or whatever.
Right. Yeah, well, when I first met my daughter on the way to she was taking me back to the airport, and I said, well, now the hard part starts. And she said, what, saying goodbye? I said, no, building and maintaining our relationship. And she goes, oh, well, that's what it's all about. I mean, she's just so, she just talks, she talks the talk, but she doesn't walk the walk, And
you were talking about, Ray, how we're so respectful of each other and we tippy-toe around on eggshells and we do all this stuff, mollycoddling each other. And I think when that ends, it's a really neat time because then a real relationship can begin. It can almost, this, too sweet politeness and all that can really interfere with what we're here to do.
Yeah, we're not-
Intimacy.
nobody's real.
You get down to it where I said the wrong thing and you say, you know what, I don't like that. And I say, "Oops, sorry, and eventually somebody's feet are going to smell and somebody's going to snore and, all those things that we have in regular, normal, bring it down off the pedestal, down to the ground, everyday relationships. And that's where I am right now. And, sometimes I don't like it. Sometimes I don't like who she is. I just think, oh, mother, how could you say that in front of my friends? I could die.
That's so normal,
That's
though.
life.
That's what families are like.
She tells me tough.
Yeah.
Tough. I'm an adoptee. You can't tell me tough.
It
supposed to nurture that.
It takes a long time to build something that's called a family. And when we now take 2 and 3 families, I'm involved in an open relationship where I sort of call my son's birth family in-laws because it's no other way to explain them. But you are these, well, they're my in-laws. Adoption is legal, and so they become your in-laws, like marriage. I have no other idea. But
We use that
it takes a
analogy all
long time to make them a part of the family and the rest of my family to see them as part of the family. And I'm, into a 13-year-old child when this has been 10 years and you're still sorting it out. But you're trying to build a family. When you got married and started to build a family, or you think of your relationship to your own parents if you're not married, or to a significant other if that's the nature of your relationship, it takes a long time and it's not done. And you're always building that family and what it looks like. And now you're entering into that family, and I don't know what it's going to look like, but I do know that it takes a long time.
I've always felt like I was a duck removed from my duck environment and put in with chickens, and, looks like a duck, acts like a duck, must be a duck. And my parents would go, I don't know why she doesn't act like a chicken. She does the most bizarre things. She's always jumping in the water. Well, I am a duck. That's what I am. When we have children that we raise, we're training them to be a part of what we are. And when you take me out of this environment where my 2 families would never do lunch and plug me in over there, my mother and I have this, we're congruous to a point, and then all of a sudden we just go right. Or all of a sudden she'll go left and I go right. And I go, where did she go? We were just together. You can never make up for the Swiss cheese that you are, the holes that all of a sudden you just plunk into. That's just adoption. Hey, that's the name of the game, and I think it's important people to know about that before they get into it. It's just part of it. So how are we for time?
A couple minutes.
There's another issue that I think really speaks to the whole thing, and that is each time I develop some questions, be it with a date, my wife, my kids, whatever, I'm going to go back to whoever's important, and stuff that I didn't want to hear before, all of a sudden I want to hear.
Right.
And so we're operating on our timetables because right now it's important to give, but maybe it hasn't hit importance to them yet. And maybe some friend of theirs gets raped, and then all of a sudden it's important to hear all the details, whereas before just the issue was enough. And it's like, don't teach me the answers before I've developed the questions.
And I can see often how it could be an adoptee finding a birth mother. Whoa, here I am, I want a relationship, and here's a woman who hasn't dealt with being a birth mother or with being raped. and she doesn't want to give this and can't give yet because she hasn't sorted it out.
Rape's
Same
not
thing.
involved, but I've
It's
got
the
a reunion
timetable.
right now that's
Yeah.
in that situation.
But it's that timetable of meshing with that other person.
It's, well, it's on a totally different nature, and it has to do with these two women. And the fact that they have a very young child. You've got lots of time to be making
But it's
plans,
present,
but you
We'll have it
little
down
less.
by the time
It's
you
just like
get
you were
there.
saying, you were asking her, is it burdensome? Well, you may not think so. I think so. I have a kid that can't even talk yet, and I want to figure out how to talk.
But by the time you get there, we're gonna have this down
Well,
pat. We'll keep working.
But
on
you
it.
gotta do
have
it
clients
perfectly, so you want
don't even
I
have
know.
placement yet, and they're worried about this kind
Yeah.
of thing. It is a very troubling situation for adoptive parents. And everyone in the adoption triad, whether it's the adoptive parent, the birth parent, or the kid, we have to realize that the kid is really the center. Instead of it being a triangle, it really is a line with the kid in the middle. I have a little bit of trouble as someone who sees all three and am not any one of them with the triad thing, because my focus is the child. And I think that we all have to remember over and over and over again that every decision that's made has to be made in light of what is best for that kid. And that's what is so scary for everybody.
'Cause you don't know what
the
is
fact
best.
We
You
don't
don't
know
know.
what is best
is-
for the kid.
And that's the key
that's
issue.
And everyone has a different opinion
If
about
we
it.
truly give them best for
Down
the
to the parent
kid,
and you know
if that's really our focus, and then we admit we don't know what the hell we're doing.
Or how to separate our
Because in
interests.
our agency, instead of
We
mandating
project
open
onto the kids so
adoption,
much.
we're keeping in touch with the fact that for years we mandated closed adoption, and we didn't know what we were doing then. Do we really know anything more about what we're doing now? So we're allowing people to choose rather than us say, this is what you gotta have. What is best? How do you define what is best?
I'm so happy to hear you say what you just said, and I've never heard somebody else come right out and just go ahead and get crazy and say that, you know what I mean? I'm an adoptee, and my opinion, maybe is a little radical, I've always felt that when you're talking about adoption, you're talking about adoptees. It's us. We're the ones you're talking about. We're the commodity here, you know?
Well, we believe that strongly in our
And we
agency.
we have the birth parents and the adopters, and this is going on. And in the meantime, you know,
The
as
kids
a child,
incidental.
as a child, I was neglected or abused, you know, as a result, and here I am as an adult, and I can feel like I can just walk away again, and I'm not involved in the thing. The homes are supposed to be homes for needy children, not children for needy homes. That's the
Right.
whole point. That is the
Absolutely.
whole point. It's for the children.
But that's
So-
why we chose to do it. There are a lot of people that would never do it. And people
I
say to
know.
me, well,
I
you know,
know.
and I share with people, they say, well, what do you think? I say, well, I did it. Well, how do you handle it? How do you feel about it? And I guess on a real spiritual level, felt this child needed me more because of all the circumstances, and that I feel privileged to have been given the opportunity to have this child that is here, you know, but for the grace of God. And so I look at these circumstances as an opportunity for me to really do a lot for this child where so many people wouldn't do it.
But roll up your sleeves, you know what I mean? Because you're in for a ride.
Oh, I know.
If we really had that position, though, of homes for needy children, we wouldn't have rules about no birth children in the home, the parents can't be over a certain age, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because in reality, we're parceling out available kids
Yeah.
rather than providing homes for kids.
Yes, exactly.
And
Actually, that's true some places and it's not others.
Yeah, I see
I mean-
it very differently in my city.
Yeah.
I think you're seeing
Exactly.
historically too.
Yeah.
actually, I'm speaking what I see the agencies doing out there. Because even though I do studies for one, because I'm an intermediary, I'm dealing with lots of agencies.
And a lot of
bottom line
agencies,
is,
you're
they're
absolutely
parceling out
right.
kids to
What
homes.
they're doing is trying to fill empty arms.
Mhm.
That is not a child welfare agency, however.
Well,
I
and
mean,
in- and
a
in the
child
private
welfare
sector-
agency is looking for homes for children, good homes for children who need them. And they aren't, quote, adoption agencies. You know, they are child welfare agencies.
But as a clinical social worker in private practice, I work collaboratively with various attorneys, but primarily with a particular attorney. And my role in my own practice is to offer counseling to birth parents to make decisions they can live with. And I explain to them that I'm not going to advocate for them to go in any direction at all. I'm going to help them focus on what are their needs and expectations and goals, and what are those that they have for their children. Then only in the event that they choose adoption as the alternative do I ever get adoptive parents involved. And I'm very, very particular in letting the adoptive parents know, I'm not here to get a baby for you. I'm only here to facilitate a match if what you're looking for in a situation is what a birth parent is looking for.
It's the first thing that we say. We have what we call an information meeting for those people who call us who are prospective adoptive parents. And the first thing that we say to people is, look, now, we are not an adoption agency. We are a child welfare agency.
Where do you get your money?
But we get our money from it happens to be Lutheran Social Services. We get some of it from the church. We also do charge a sliding scale fee. However, that is not, what our sliding scale fee does not pay our salary. It helps a little bit. It keeps us from being in the red. But at any rate, but it isn't a pleasant thing to be told.
Well, we're out of time. Thanks to everybody for coming out, and hopefully next year we'll have more to say, more answers, and more participation. I think this is great. And maybe in your area, you would speak out more about this subject.
Thanks for doing it.
This concludes this session.